Welcome to episode 196 of the weekly Shared Security Show. And joining me this week are two co-hosts who know a thing or two about cybersecurity, Scott Wright and Kevin Johnson.
A thing or two? I might know
three.
two.
I was more concerned about that intro than it deserved to be concerned.
Yeah.
I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting.
I like to throw it off a bit.
Yeah, after the email that said, "Oh, good, we have topics that are going to enrage Kevin." I didn't know where we were going with introductions.
Let's get into that actually, because I do have a topic here that it has actually made Kevin and I think the rest of the cybersecurity community pretty
I'm
angry.
ready, waiting. I have my bubbly and.
I'm very, very sorry. I brought AHA today.
I have nothing. I have a bottle of water. So I'm sorry, I'm not on the bubbly train yet.
Huh?
But
very sorry that you don't have good taste in water.
I know.
So let's enrage Kevin. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So the governor of Missouri promises swift justice to the person who he says hacked the Missouri Department of Education website. And this person actually was, I think it was a reporter.
Yes,
for
it was a reporter, which
the
makes
Post-Dispatch, a Missouri newspaper, had found that they could see the Social Security numbers of, it was like 100,000 teachers.
But they only looked at three.
Well, only looked at three, right?
Right, and I want to be very clear about that because the reason I think that's so good, important to call out, is I have very many times said that to prove a vulnerability does not require you to grab everything.
That's correct.
Yeah. Like, hey, I got to validate this is real.
Right.
We can talk about permissions and stuff like that. Like,
right.
In general, in my opinion, there's no permission necessary for what this reporter did.
So therefore,
they proved it out with three, which is awesome.
I think what we can safely say is then it wasn't really a hack, right?
Well, no, of course it was a hack, a horrible criminal hacker. And I'm so glad the Highway Safety Department, I don't know, CHIPS is on its mission, or I guess that would be MIPS.
Code 2.
So let's maybe explain to the audience who may not be familiar with what happened here. But
if I may, really quickly, I think what you mean is let's explain to the audience who may not be familiar with the stupidity and ignorance that is spewing from the governor's office of Missouri about what happened. Sorry, we should be accurate,
which is true.
What Kevin said.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right, but essentially, you could access these socials by viewing source of the web page,
kinda,
or by hitting F12,
which means developer tools.
And this is the one thing I'm not quite sure on. Were the socials base 64 encoded or not?
So my understanding, and I want to be very clear, I did not test this.
Yeah.
Right. Like
no one here has.
My understanding from what people are saying, conversations, things, my understanding of how modern web applications work is that they didn't do a view source. They use the developer tools because the page is made up of a lot of client-side code.
Yeah.
Probably JavaScript. And then it gets an object back that has all of the data, and then it parses it and displays just what's supposed to be. We've all seen this. We've told stories about vulnerabilities like this. And so what the person did was they got that data back. The data was encoded in some fashion. Now, that could be base 64. That could just be URL encoded, right? Yeah. So the dashes were encoded or something, right? Like there was some form of encoding. They decoded it, saw socials, and went, right? And the governor showed his ass.
Literally posting like screenshots of cybercrime law and all of this.
The governor did not just double down. The governor dug that hole and kept digging. Now let's go a little bit further. The reporter found this, and there's not a lot of There's not a lot of information about how the reporter found it. And what I mean by that is, why did the reporter go look? Did somebody, like a security person, reach out to the reporter? Was like there a whistleblower? It was like, for some reason, the reporter went and looked at this application, and we don't know why. Or at least I've not seen anything that says why. And to be honest, I don't think it matters. But they looked at it. They then reported it to the people responsible for the system. They went out to the education department, whatever that's called, and said, look, we're going to write a report about how bad the security is here. But before we release the article, and I want to be very clear, the First Amendment does not have an exclusion for holding articles because of cybersecurity concerns. We're going to wait on publishing until you can fix the problem. And the thing that, in my opinion, who I would hope would be the former governor, it still bothers me he's still the governor, would be calling out is how fast the people responsible for the system fixed it. Like my understanding is the reporter went to him and said, bad, and those people went, oh my gosh, you're right. Don't know how we did that, whatever, right? And they went and fixed it. What the governor should have gotten on his pompous pedestal for is to compliment and encourage his own staff, the people who report up through the executive branch, and say, damn good work. Awesome job. Shouldn't have had the vulnerability. This is bad. We're going to evaluate why this got into production. We're going to look at this. Instead, Pompacity himself, I think I made up that word, but let's go with it, got onto a press release, press conference, and then kept tweeting it out. There's no other politician we know or pseudo politician we know that did bad work over Twitter.
Yeah, and his comment sort of inferred that the reporter was trying to embarrass the department, right? Which it clearly wasn't.
They came after us. They tried to embarrass us. We're going to press charges. We're going to, and I want to be very clear. I will accept a level of ignorance about this type of behavior. I don't like it. If the governor had just said, they hacked us, we're going to look into it. Okay. I wouldn't have liked it. I would have been irritated with it, but I would have been like, okay, you know what? They don't know. And then the minute every cybersecurity of any worth that responded, because there were a number of security people that I looked at and went, are you an idiot too? Hey, this isn't what you think it is. This is not bad. This is not. The governor kept going. At that point, we've moved past ignorant into willful stupidity. And right off the bat, ignore cybersecurity. Reporters have a First Amendment right to report. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It's because it's the most important one. Don't screw with it. We've had this conversation before. I am a rabid First Amendment supporter. I'm a rabid believer that the governor has the ability and right to say whatever asinine thing he has to say. I do believe there should be consequences and he should no longer be governor. But just my opinion. So he went after the First Amendment first and then proceeded to expose how little about his own laws he knows.
Yeah.
It's asinine. This is not hacking. This is looking at how an application works.
Yeah.
And I am a firm believer in not testing things we don't have permission to test. Looking at what's in my client application is absolutely.
Yeah. I guess that's a question that, maybe a lot of listeners could have, where is the line between doing a URL query and maybe changing a character in the URL and seeing somebody else's data? Is that hacking?
But that's not even what this was.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that the discussion could go.
That is hacking.
Right.
That is hacking. Yeah. Now, is it okay? I don't know. We can discuss that.
And then there's also the malicious intent thing. Are you doing it because you want to, spy on your neighbors, or is it is it just, you suspect there could be a problem, and if you find something, you're going to report it? That's.
Let me ask you a question. If I send a letter to somebody, and it arrives at your house, and it's addressed to you, and you open up that letter, and in the letter is a letter to you with your information on it, but also Tom's information and my information. Did you hack anything to look at that letter?
No.
Nope. You opened it up because it was directed towards me.
Yeah, you opened it up. Was there hacking? No. Is it bad?
And then if you rub it with lemon oil or lemon juice, and another message appears that wasn't intended for you,
well,
it's still not hacking.
Even if we don't go that far, but you're absolutely right. That's still not hacking also. But in this case, the reporter, as a visitor to the website, went to the website, visited the website, and was handed an envelope.
Yeah.
Which would be the HTTP response.
That's a great analogy. Right? Yeah.
They opened the response and examined what was in it. That's it. If you put the wrong, and I'll give a perfect, I'm using this analogy because it happened when I was at Blue Cross. Their mailer system, and this is public, I was an employee at Blue Cross, this publicly happened, their mailer system did a one-off. So the addressing sheet had your address, the data sheet that had, the benefits, the claim, all that kind of stuff was the next person in the record.
Lovely.
Right? So every single envelope that went out one day, or however many that went out one day, they were just one-off.
Misaddressed.
Right?
Yeah.
Misaddressed. Yeah. Nobody hacked that. Nobody, but I don't know what it was, like 5,000 people's data got released. Very similar, right? You had to do an action to open the envelope. You had to do an action to unfold everything. You had to do an action to look at the data.
Yeah, and one variant on what you said, if I got the letter and it was addressed to me, I opened it, but it was clearly a letter for you, and I read it. That may be an ethical question, but it's not a legal question.
Yes. Yeah, we can actually talk to, and that's why I want to be very clear. I'm talking about it was addressed to you because it's different. I get letters at my house all the time from my wife's Denise. Says, Dad, he died. Before he died, we were doing a lot of the stuff. Denise was doing a lot of the stuff for his, bills and everything else like that. So our address is the one that so many people have for Lenny. And we get letters for him all the time. I don't open them. I don't open them because they're not to me, right? Like we shred them. Now, at this point, he died long enough ago. I'll be blunt. We opened his mail when it first started because there were important stuff and we were managing it. But we shred them. We pick them up. We throw them in the shredder, and we're done. In this case, the response was addressed to the reporter.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about the two of you, but I'm basing everything off of what I'm reading, what people are saying, right? I did not test anything. I'm not part of this case. So if we find out that how it's being presented is different, if the governor knows something that we don't, he doesn't. But if he knows something like, well, actually what the reporter did was compromised a back-end system and gained access to a database and did all this, that's not what happened. Like, this bug is something we've seen time and time again in applications. People move to a modern application and they don't understand what that means, and they push more data down to the client than they should. That's what happened.
And the reporter disclosed it responsibly. As well.
In my opinion, I don't think that covers it. Not only did the reporter disclose it ridiculously responsibly, they held up their own livelihood.
Yeah.
Their job is to report things, and they worked with their publisher and said, look, let's not publish this yet. Let's give them the chance to fix it. They didn't have to, if the governor was right, and nothing this governor has said has been right. If this governor said good morning to me, I'd be like, are you sure it's morning? Because you're an idiot. If the reporter had wanted to embarrass the administration, the reporter wouldn't have waited for you to fix it.
Exactly.
From the rooftops, look at this horrible thing they're doing. Yeah, this whole thing is stupid. And I want to be very clear. You mentioned my tweets back to the governor. I tweeted back to the governor a number of times. I want to say it was 3. I want to be very clear. Every one of those tweets was edited. Every one of those tweets, I wrote something else, most of which would be obscene. And then edited it down to what was said, because this one irritates me. There are so many bad things people do on the internet. There's so many bad things that the Highway Patrol of Missouri, which, let's be very clear, I just find it, I'm not demeaning any of the Highway Patrol of Missouri. I am sure that I just find it absolutely hilarious that the cyber team for the Missouri law enforcement is in the Highway Patrol. I just have this image
somewhere.
Of John and Ponch doing imaging of web servers. I, like I said, it's CHIPS, but instead of California, it's Missouri, so MIPS. They have their boots and their motorcycle, and they pull up to the data center. Sorry, total tangent.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's also a tale of ignorance, of not seeing, or listening to the other side, right? And you're so set in your ways that, you're just ignorant to.
I disagree.
What?
Sorry.
I know you're
sorry. I don't mean to. I think you're wrong. And here's why you're wrong. I'm being a pedantic person. Ignorance. This is not ignorance. This is stupidity. And the reason I say that is ignorance is you don't know something. We are all ignorant
Willful
of very many things. Willful, still, I don't like that term because ignorance is, to me, this is stupidity. Beyond that, I don't think this is a case of not listening to the other side. I think this is a case of downright ignoring the other side because you have some political message you want to get across. And to me, that's worse, right? Because here is a politician, one of our representatives, right? Remember, I don't use the word leader.
We elect, the state people in Missouri elected this individual.
Exactly. Right? And this person's entire responsibility is to understand what they're saying and what they're threatening. And they're not willing to do that to gain political points. Because I guarantee you, I saw some of the responses to the tweet. There are people in Missouri who believe that the governor is right and this reporter somehow, secret super squirrel, hacked the system, and they're ready with pitchforks and torches to get rid of this reporter. And that's why I'm so angry here. This is absolutely willful stupidity for political gain, and that pisses me off at my core. I would agree with it being ignorance when he said it first.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's ignorance. When every good security person is responding with good information. I don't remember who it was that said it. Just it was this great response. I wish I remembered it. Who it was. It was this great response about, hey, look, you don't understand what you're talking about, and I'm willing to help you and talk you through this and explain it. And here is a synopsis, and here's why this isn't bad. And there were lots of those responses, but this one was like just tweet after tweet after tweet that really dug into it as to why this governor was going the wrong way. And the governor responded with, no, it was hacking. And I'm paraphrasing.
We'll have the whole thread linked in the show notes. If you listeners want to check that out.
And if you're really curious about what I was going to say, just ask. I'll let you know. I won't say it here because that whole explicit tag.
That's right. So, interesting story. And you're right. I so many people tried to comment and reach out. I was
not one of them.
Right, but crazy nonetheless. So, are you looking for the very best products to protect your digital privacy? Well, Silent Pocket has everything you need with their patented product line of high-quality Faraday bags, backpacks, clutches, and wallets. Visit silentpocket.com today and receive 10% off your order by using discount code SHAREDSECURITY.
You want your organization to be secure and compliant and to have a healthy culture, but your employees' lack of awareness makes you vulnerable to data theft, fraud, and compliance penalties. It's frustrating that the boring, static training content that's being used today has failed to improve employees' ability to defend against cyber attacks. At ClickArmor, we know that without using gamification, it's extremely hard to get staff to understand how to avoid threats. Our gamified simulations and challenges have provided a 50% average improvement in thousands of employees' ability to spot phishing threats. Go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to get your free gamified phishing assessment for up to 500 employees. You'll see quickly how gamified simulations can help your team be more resilient and compliant and help avoid costly ransomware and fraud incidents. Let ClickArmor help you go from being an underappreciated, stressed out fall guy to being an innovative leader who's the catalyst for greater productivity in your organization.
So speaking of government, not that we have more stories of that, but I found this story interesting. Over 30 countries have pledged to fight ransomware in this U.S.-led global meeting, and I believe this was kind of part of the Biden administration's, planning around, how Jen Easterly had, came out as the new CISA director and implemented some changes around how the government is working with big corporations and all these things. So kind of part of that plan was to get countries together to agree that, we're going to fight ransomware. And I find it a little interesting that there were 2 countries that were not present in this meeting. And I think you can guess which 2 countries they were, but China and Russia, and how those 2 countries alone have been, and I've seen some data, some stories about this that say, are state sponsored ransomware, and a lot of these attacks are coming out of those 2 countries. Yes, attribution is hard.
Yeah,
we all know that, but why those 2 countries didn't show up, I think, is very telling.
Yeah.
I just think that they all get hit with ransomware and they didn't have GPS to get to where the meeting was. So that's why. There's no other reason why. There's absolutely, I cannot imagine that China or Russia would not like to go after ransomware.
And I guess they're just not as excited about being in the League of Nations as everybody else.
Yeah, but wouldn't you at least show up, even if you're guilty? Like, wouldn't you show up just to say, "Hey guys, I'm here to play"? Totally. Yeah,
I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, I'll find it. Yeah, let's do it. I'll sign, no problem."
Yeah, but I don't know. The fact that you're absent, I don't know. Just pretty telling.
I hate these types of things. I feel that more often than not, they're boondoggles to make people feel important. I do not believe that law enforcement at the country level, right? The federal level or whatever. I don't believe that the FBI isn't already talking to the Republic of Korea, Singapore, Romania, the Ukraine. Like, I believe that the law enforcement people there are working together already. I like the idea that we're gonna encourage it. I like the idea that we're gonna do all that kind of stuff. I think this is news to make somebody look important, and I hate that, and I wish it wasn't. In my opinion, this is a hammer or a sledgehammer or whatever you want to say it to solve a problem that uses rivets or screws or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not that they are. It's bad that they're doing it. I just don't think it's going to have the impact we think it is, and what I'm actually more concerned about is the amount of attention this has gotten as a solution. The number of people I know that are hit with massive ransomware attacks who have tried to reach out to the FBI and whoever, the local police, because they don't know who to call, they don't know what to do, that are just turned away, right? Like and this isn't just a ransomware thing, right? I've got people who have reached out to me about cyberstalking and people hacking them and stealing their identity, and they don't know where to go. And so in my opinion, what I'd rather see, I like this, I'm glad we're doing it, whatever. I just don't think it's effective. What I would rather see is law enforcement actually building better communication paths and actually trying to do something. Right. I get it's a balancing act, right? Some young woman who is being cyber stalked by an ex-boyfriend who has access to her IoT stuff and is doing all this kind of stuff. doesn't have the same impact on people as ransomware hitting a hospital. I agree. I know that. But since neither of those people or organizations know who they can talk to,
it's a great point.
I'd really rather see us focus on that and help with that. I'd also really rather see us, instead of partnering with massive companies that are just looking to make a buck off of this, let's actually work with organizations who are trying to help small to medium-sized businesses get better, right? We've spent way too much time, both politicians and the news, and I know, big First Amendment supporter, but I'm complaining about both in a second. We spent so much time talking about, oh man, they're going after our water supply. Yeah, you know what? They are. They're also going after that small hardware shop down the street and the hospital there. And right, like, let's give people support. Let's encourage patching and awareness. And like I've said a million times, I love Scott's product and everything there, but let's start teaching people how to build systems that don't encourage this behavior. Instead of saying to Nigeria, and I'm just picking a random out of the list, right? Instead of saying to Nigeria, hey, let's work to fight ransomware, let's actually provide software and hardware and resources to improve things. I don't know.
Just a question. So do you think there's any kind of like a barrier or obstacle by the fact that as soon as you start to disclose exactly what you're going to do to fight this stuff, it becomes less effective?
Nope.
There's no sort of obscurity that is an advantage?
I don't think so in this case. Obviously, if we're investigating who's doing it, yes, there's a level of, you don't want to say, hey, I suspect Joe, or should I say Tim, since, as I said last night on Twitter, my daughter thinks I know too many people named Tim. So obscurity for that. But saying, hey, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get awareness out and a communication path out so that small businesses know who they can call if there's a problem.
Absolutely.
We're going to fight this by reaching out to the local police departments around and giving them information about how they can redirect people who need help, right? How we could go to the local mom and pop computer repair stores and give them tooling to help people recover from this stuff, give them a path, right?
That's a cool idea.
InfraGard had a great model that they were following, and in my opinion, my experience is, depending on the area, that InfraGard either works really, really well or fails miserably, right? Help build that, because none of that is going to be secret. None of that is, if we're talking about how we're going after Revel and getting the decryptor or whatever, obscurity there, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about giving people the skill set, giving people the information, giving people the support, giving people the shoulder to cry on when they're dealing with this problem. That's what we need to be spending money on, because we're not going to fix this by getting all of these countries, including China and Russia, to all agree that they're going to fight ransomware. That doesn't solve the problem, because we haven't solved the murder problem, yet murder has been focused on by the government for hundreds of thousands of years or something.
Since the beginning of time.
Right? We have not solved the drug problem by giving law enforcement more money to solve that problem. We've solved problems by educating. We've solved problems by supporting, and I'm going to give a bad example. Teenage pregnancy is at an all-time low, is my understanding, right? At my house, we have 0 teenage pregnancies, which is good. But the way, my understanding, and I don't know, but my understanding is that the way we solved teenage pregnancy is by sharing more information about, you know what causes teenage pregnancy? Teenage sex. So let's teach them what that means. Let's support them if it happens. Let's get that's how we solve that problem. How did we solve the marijuana addiction problem? Oh yeah, we didn't, right? Because the way we attempted to solve it was give law enforcement more power. What this thing does is giving law enforcement more power. And I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement, good law enforcement. But law enforcement is how you respond after you drop the ball, not how you fix the problem, right? Cops don't fix traffic lights. They issue tickets when people run them.
Yeah, good idea.
That my opinion. I'm a jerk though.
You know, Kevin, maybe you should run for political office. Kevin Johnson for president. There you go, folks. I'm going to say it right now.
Then he'll be on so many more podcasts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be the next president. That's what I'm going to be.
There it is.
I'm going to run. I mean, look, I got Twitter.
You heard it here first on the show.
Will you confirm or deny whether or not you're running for? Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. Me in any position of power. I don't even know how I run a family, right? Oh, I do. My wife does it. But
by a thread. Somehow you do it. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I was going to mention just real quick, the other story, which is related, right? And I think the FBI and InfraGard, and we do see good stuff that comes out from them. We don't want to discount the government and, the efforts that they're doing. We could be critical of that, but I do want to, call out things like this recent announcement by the FBI, kind of a warning to the U.S. public, again, education about, people using spoofed unemployment websites. Because this, again, taking advantage of the pandemic and the employment situations going on in the country, warning them about these domains that are out there. And ironically, I thought of you, Scott, when I saw those domains as
that's great. Yeah.
Oh, look at this. This is a great example and really good of showing this is a malicious domain. And this is kind of how they're structured to make it look like something legitimate.
Yeah.
Which is important to educate people on.
The sad thing when I read this is in just about every attempt I've made to try and reach government authorities who should actually care about educating people more on this stuff. It's not in my mandate, like I can write a press release to say, everybody be careful about these websites, but they can't spend any money on actually teaching people anything. So,
yeah. Well, and that's where I go. Tom, I totally agree with what you said, right? We need to encourage and congratulate attaboys, whatever you want to call it, right? When people are, when the FBI does do something good, like, hey, look, here are things that are malicious. Let's do this. That's great. I think Scott's point is absolutely accurate too, though, is that, a press release costs nothing. Well, it costs them nothing, right? We pay a lot of money for them, but the working out to educate people is so critical. So critical, and not education to scare, right? Like too many of the education things I've seen are to scare people.
And that's the problem with the media, right? Like we talked about last week, killware and
God, I forgot about. I don't know how I forgot that one. I blanked it out.
Sensational headlines. And by the way, the YouTube video of our last episode, which if you haven't checked out, I highly recommend you do. Probably one of our most viewed and commented episodes in a long time. So,
was it because of the eyes?
I think it was the eyes, Kevin.
Know.
Yeah,
I don't know, but there was a gentleman that actually made a comment like, wait, let me pull it up.
I think didn't he say we have great rapport, right?
No, well, yeah, there was a really good comment about how they really enjoy, like, we have a lot of chemistry and rapport.
I think you guys are adorable,
and we think you're adorable too. And then somebody else commented, like, "What the f is this show about?"
We don't even know. Wait. Is it supposed to be about something?
Exactly. I don't know. I'm not going to reply just because I'm like, we don't really know, guys.
I'm not sure. I remember 10 years ago listening to there were podcasts that were kind of, call them weekly podcasts, and it took a long time for them to get to a point, as I recall.
Let me ask you a question, Tom. Why aren't you responding? What would you like the podcast to be about? If you want a point, tell us. We'll talk about it. Maybe.
I could, but I've learned on Twitter, and maybe that's because I'm a little jaded from replying to people on Twitter in the past, and it's gone down rabbit holes of like feeding the trolls, right?
Yeah, I've had it, but
I'm very careful with that. But
I don't know that this person is being a troll.
I don't think so either.
Hey, what would you like the podcast to be about? In my opinion, Tom, Scott, if you guys agree, I believe that this podcast is about us discussing stories that we believe are relevant to the cybersecurity community and our opinions. And for Tom to find stories that are going to enrage me.
And to talk about Star Wars and googly eyes and all kinds of other things.
Ever talked about Star Wars?
That's what makes it fun.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah.
Says the guy with the Star Wars costume behind.
Next week, I don't know if Chewbacca or Vader will be behind me.
Ooh, with
doing a presentation. I'm sorry?
With the eyes too?
So if it's Chewbacca, I'll swap the eyes because I haven't bought the second set yet.
Great.
I will not be putting the eyes in Vader because
he doesn't have eyes.
The helmet.
You can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't see.
They go against code.
No, it's not that they go against code. You wouldn't see them. You can't see my eyes inside Vader when I'm wearing it. So yeah, no. So I'll be swapping out next week. Excellent. I don't know which of the two it will be, but
well then. To the listeners, check that you definitely want to check out next week's episode for sure then. But this is a call. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, definitely check that out. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, try to make it over to YouTube. You can see all of Kevin's amazing backgrounds and add some visual to the show for you. Always a good time.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we'll end the podcast here. But thank you both again for always being on the show. And thanks to all of our listeners for listening and supporting the podcast. Much appreciated. Thank you for the comments. Yes. And we will talk to everyone next week.
See you, everyone.
That's all for this week's show. Be sure to follow the Shared Security Show on Twitter and Instagram for the latest news and show updates. If you like this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast listening app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.